Good evening, everybody. I know we were going to start exactly 5:30, but I left a little bit of leeway time here for our participants to log on. My name is Dorinda White, and I'm the president of the DC Federation of Democratic Women, and I'd like to welcome you tonight to our informational event called the DC Ballot, What You Need to Know. We put our heads together as an organization to basically, we felt that as this whole balloting process is taking place, there's much that we did not know. And I can say in first person, when I received my ballot, which I still have here, I asked for absentee ballot, and I looked at it, and I'm fairly educated in terms of how to fill out a ballot and everything. I said, wait a second, there's a lot of stuff that people don't know. So that's where we basically jump-started this idea to have a DC ballot, what you need to know. Let me set the premise for tonight by saying that one of the things that I researched and wanted to make it a point to share is that all politics is local. We know that. And we're so fixated on what's going on in the White House and our new vice presidential candidate that we haven't really focused on what's going on here locally, which is basically what's going to affect us on a daily basis, our families, our communities, and the services that we receive in the District of Columbia. So with saying that all politics is local, ultimately constituents and voters are concerned most about issues that affect their personal lives and home communities, and they vote accordingly. So today we're hosting this event to make certain that you are as well informed as possible. And that's why we brought together this very expert panel of speakers to share with us what we should know as we prepare to vote on November 3rd and before November 3rd. I'd like to thank Liz Duarte, who is our Zoomster. She's on as a co-host. There she is, Liz. She's our Eastern Regional Director. And just to give you a very quick background in terms of who we are, because some of you may not have heard of us and you joined us tonight, we are the DC Federation of Democratic Women. We are one of 35 state federations, including Puerto Rico, who operate under the umbrella of the National Federation of Democratic Women. We also have 3 seats on the Democratic National Committee, where one of our members, Virgie Rollins, is actually the chair of the DNC Black Caucus. So our federation is affiliated with the local Democratic Party, and our overall mission is to promote advocacy, training, and candidacy to empower and engage women at all levels of the Democratic Party. In DC, the federation consists of 2 local organizations, the DC Democratic Women's Club, headed by Jeanette Mobley, and the Metropolitan Democratic Women's Club, headed by Estelle Lloyd. This summer, we were very active in hosting events that we felt were informative on both voter suppression, Let's Get Into Trouble. We had Brenda Jones, who spoke about the Queens of the Resistance. And each club also has been actively engaged in voter outreach, get out the vote by phone banking, texting, virtual meetings, and other means of making certain that we helped not only here locally, but also nationwide in the battleground states. So this event tonight is going to have some key speakers that we want to make certain that we acknowledge them when the time comes, and I'm looking at my run of show here. So right now, to start us off, I'd like for all of us to bow our heads for a moment, or just sit silently for a moment of silence for the victims of COVID-19, national and local leadership, and for safe, free, and fair elections. So one moment of silence, please. Oops. And thank you for participating in the moment of silence. And with that, I'm turning it over to Hazel Thomas, who is a member of Team 2020, DFW's Team 2020. Hazel, the floor is yours. Hazel, you are muted. Unmute yourself. Hazel?
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, ladies, gentlemen. I have the great honor and the distinction of being able to introduce, even though you've already heard from her, to introduce our president, who will be the moderator for this evening's affair. And I felt it was important that we introduce her, because even though those of us who are members of the DC Federation know her and know what a stellar background she has and how involved she has been, many of the people on the call may not know that about her. And so I wanted to let you know that, just say that Dorinda White is the president of the DC Federation of Democratic Women, as she earlier said. We're going into the second year of her office. She is a career professional in communications. She's been a communications director and senior legislative affairs person on the Hill. She's very much involved in her community. She lives in Southwest and is in Ward 6, and she is the vice chair of the Ward 6 Democrats. You can't talk about Dorinda without giving the backstory, which is she worked for many years with C. Dolores Tucker, and she honed her many varied, wonderful skill set working as the development officer with C. Dolores Tucker. And so I just wanted to say that we thank you so very much. It's taken a lot. She's a very, very busy person, since she is a public servant, actively engaged in her work, as well as serving the community. She's also been the communications director for the many conventions that the DC Democratic State Committee has held. And even though this is a nonpartisan activity, at the end, we will announce a few partisan activities that are upcoming. But I wanted to say to Dorinda, on behalf of our chair of Team 2020, you can't see her. Her name is Gwendolyn Johnson. We thank you. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Dorinda.
You're welcome. And thank you, Hazel.
Dorinda, you're on mute.
Dorinda, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. I wanted to acknowledge again our two presidents, Jeanette Mobley of the DC Democratic Women's Club and Estelle Lloyd. I don't know if they're on yet, but I'd like to acknowledge their presence and their contributions to the organization, as well as I said earlier, Liz Duarte, who is our Eastern Regional Director. And tonight she has generously offered to serve as our Zoomster. I called her our Zoomster. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our Team 2020 members: Gwendolyn Johnson, who is the chair, Linda Jefferson, who is also on, Sumaya Lane, Melissa Irby, Hazel Thomas, Dana Hall, Jean Bethel, and Cheryl Morse. So I'm going to move immediately to introducing our panel of speakers tonight. And we have, as you've seen on the invitation we sent out, Michael Bennett, who is the chair of DCBOE. He's a partner and executive vice president of strategy at Evans and Chambers Technology. He's an expert in corporate and contract law, information management, and other cybersecurity strategy and execution. And next we have Jennifer Blemur. I hope I said that right, Jennifer. Blemur. Esquire, committed to advancing public welfare. She's a director of the Women's Legislators Lobby, a program of the Women's Action for New Directions. WIL is a national nonpartisan network of women state legislators who work together to influence federal policy and budget priorities. A licensed attorney, she lives in DC. She's a graduate of the David A. Clark School of Law, a native New Yorker like myself. I'm from Brooklyn. First generation Haitian American and a member of Zeta Phi Beta sorority, AKA, and she currently serves as president of the DC Young Democrats. Next, we have Bob King, who has the longest term of any ANC commissioner in DC. This year alone, Bob has played a major role in securing drop boxes for all publicly funded senior citizen residences and long advocated for mail-in ballots for all senior citizens. He's been a community organizer, a consultant, long-term advocate for senior citizens, organizing efforts to get them to the polls for 40 years. He's widely known as the mayor of Fort Lincoln, where he has lived for 30 plus years, and is a community advocate as well as a supporter of Thurgood Marshall Elementary School. We also invited Robert Branham because we wanted to focus on the ANC commissioners because no one talks about them, but they are relevant to local politics. So Robert Branham is an ANC commissioner for ANC 5E08, President Emeritus of the DC Federation of Civic Associations, Chairman Emeritus of the Ward 5 Democrats, and former president of the Bloomingdale Civic Association. So with that, I'd like to bring to the screen, is Mr. Bennett on yet? Michael Bennett?
He just came on. He's just signed in.
He's just signed in? Okay.
Yes.
So we're gonna wait a moment for Mr. Bennett, Chair of the DC Board of Elections, to log on. Hi, Alice, the past president of the DC Federation. Hi, Alice. Mr. Bennett? One moment. If he just signed on, he might be, okay, here we go. I see him on now. So I made the introduction to Mr. Bennett. I read your bio. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, that's okay. There you are.
There you
Sorry
are.
about that.
Thank you for
It
joining
is,
us.
yeah, today is Pop Day, so I have my 6-year-old. So sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. We thank you for joining us, and without further ado, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well,
we've
I
already done.
thank you for having us, and thank you for having me. Am I coming through okay?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay. One, I just wanted to thank everybody. We're all anxious and looking forward to election week, starting on October 27th. In the meantime, we are really focused on supporting new registrations and registration and getting prepared in so many ways. Ballots, for the most part, the largest bulk have gone out. We sent out, our mail house sent out 460,000 plus ballots to DC voters. We are getting ballots being deposited either by mail or by drop box. We've got 55 drop boxes out around the city, and the locations are on the website. And if you choose to bring your ballot in, you can wait until early voting begins on October 27th, take it to a vote center, or you can actually, if you like, you can actually bring it into the DC Board of Elections now. The drop boxes are being collected twice a day, and we are just really focused on trying to make sure that people are able to the voting is convenient and safe. There will be 32 locations that will be open early and on the last day of elections, so you don't have to go to any particular one like the precinct system. You would actually just go to the vote wherever it's convenient. You go to that place and you can vote. The one thing that we're pushing is for people to do everything early. If you've got your ballot in the mail, and we hope you have, vote it early. Fill it out and get it in. Either put it in a drop box or put it in the mail. If you're going to vote in person, then vote early. We are expecting record-shattering turnout. I'm expecting there to be 3 times normal turnout, which means doesn't matter what day you go, there will be a line. But the later you wait, probably the longer the line's going to be. We have all the jurisdictions in the area, Virginia, Maryland, and obviously DC as well, are trying to make mail-in voting the best option, but also make in-person voting the option that if that's what works out best. Either you don't receive your ballot in the mail, or you just choose to vote in person. That there are lots of options. I have to say, to kind of pat us on the back, we are half the population of Prince George's, and probably a third of the population of Montgomery County, and we've got at least double the number of drop boxes and vote locations than those jurisdictions. So, and I know they're doing their very best and are focused just like we are. So with that, I will shut up, and I think Ms. Miller's on the phone too, or on the line too, and trying to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Okay. you, Mr. Bennett. We're going to go on with our other speakers, and if you can stay on, we will have a Q&A session after that. Are you able to still stay with us and still be pop?
I'm gonna try. I think the pizza just came in, so I may go out for a minute, but yeah, I'll stay around.
Okay, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is Bob King, and we asked Bob King to join us tonight because of his efforts in the senior citizens community. Our first thought when we thought of putting this together was to focus on how we're going to make certain that our seniors are going to be able to vote and to get to either to mail their ballots or what processes we're going to be put into place to facilitate their voting efforts. As we know, the senior voting bloc in DC has always been very consistent and strong. And our Team 2020, our first thought out of the gate was, let's host an event focused on making certain that seniors were taken care of. And in our conversation with Bob, we were made very aware of what's being done to facilitate and enhance voting possibilities for our seniors. And with that, Bob, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to be a part of a panel with the Democratic Federation of Democratic Women, and also I'm very happy to be a part of this panel, which is now my good friend, Chairman Bennett. I have not met him in person, but I feel like if I walk down the street, I probably would know him, but we've been talking on a regular basis, and I appreciate his honesty in getting back to me. And of course, some of the wheels on the train has fallen off. Sometimes it's not how you start, but how you finish. And hopefully the way we're going to finish with this piece, and Mr. Chairman Bennett will address that, will probably be the 21st century voting for all seniors. As you know, that initially when we started, we talked about drop boxes. We were talking about voters containers for seniors. Just a little background so we know who we're talking about when we're speaking to the elders of the village, and allow me and indulge my for a moment. The DC population is over 700,000 individuals and still growing some. Of that 700,000, over 100,000 of the residents of the District of Columbia, that population, are what I call the elders of the village and the seniors. To give you a breakdown in terms of the seniors, the age 55 to 64 represents about 72,000 seniors in the District of Columbia, which is about 10.4% of that population. The second group is 65 to 74. They represent about 53,567 individuals, and that number is about 7.4%. The third category is 75 to 85, which is 26,149. They represent 3.65% of that senior population. And then you have the 85 plus. They have about 11,904, which represent 1.66% of the senior population. As we all know, the senior population are the most vulnerable, stable, and reliable voting bloc, not only in the city, but in the country. Seniors are 3 times more likely to contact the COVID-19 and 6 times more likely to be hospitalized. Seniors in public and private housing are overwhelmingly Black. 54% seniors in public and private houses live alone, which is 14% higher than the national norm. Not all seniors live in public and private housing are seniors. We have individuals who are 18 and over, who have other health-related disabilities, and they're at the lowest form of insurance, which is Medicaid. Seniors are more susceptible to the coronavirus for the following reasons: underlying health issues, pre-existing conditions such as lung disease, diabetes, hypertension, dementia, functionally illiterate, and kidney disease as it relates to dialysis. My plan that we presented to the Board of Election was in keeping with the CDC's safety guidelines for seniors across the country that was issued on June the 22nd, and July the 8th, which is what the CDC says: seniors need not to choose between their health and going to the polls. 2, alternatives to casting their ballot are going to the polls and casting their ballot during the November the 3rd, 2020 election. The city is responsible for putting forth other alternatives for seniors to vote in the District of Columbia. That's when the Senior COVID-19 Commission, that's one of the commissions that's established under Ward 5 Dems, chaired by leader Gordon Fletcher. And part of my committee is Courtney Williams, Patty Pierce, Bob King. We all live in Fort Lincoln. Fort Lincoln is home to the largest population of seniors living anywhere in the city. What we set out to do is to come up with a blueprint of who was in these senior buildings. I want to remind everybody, they've still been under strict quarantine since March. I set out to provide to the Board of Elections that for just an example, in Fort Lincoln, there are about 9 folks in there that are blind. There are about 70, 80 homebound people who are cared for by professional people other than the families. There's over 125 people in wheelchairs and walkers. There are folks in there who are functionally literate. What my plan attempted to do was to eliminate forever, going into the 21st century. This really puts me out of business. I've been doing seniors since Walter Washington. Last time I did seniors was for Muriel Bowser, Racine, Phil Menison, and y'all know the list. I'm the king of associates. That's how I make money to subsidize my retirement income. I thought about this and I prayed over it. It's not important for me now to put up and do 26 buses and send them citywide. I know Popeye's gonna miss me because I won't be able to get 3 pieces of chicken and a biscuit anymore. But what was more important for me was to say the only public transportation for seniors going into the 21st century would be the elevator. Not an Uber, not a cab, not a bus. Simply is that those who are in wheelchairs, walkers and canes, functionally illiterate, blind and vision impaired, they would get on like Fort Lincoln. The largest building in Fort Lincoln is 306 units. Our plan was to have all of them get on the elevator, come downstairs and put their ballot in the drop box. Early on, we presented that plan. We were able to help work with the Board of Election under the leadership of Chairman Bennett and Melissa and Alice Miller to try to come up and reduce the voters guide from a 50-page document that I call a needle in the haystack. And at that time, we were advocating, if you can't do a mail-in ballots for all of the folks in the District of Columbia, let's do them for the seniors. We know what happened during the primary. It gave us an opportunity to sometimes something happens, it doesn't work, and then you find a better mousetrap. I believe that we had convinced Chairman Bennett that the best mousetrap for these seniors was to try to at least put a drop box, or later on was basically a voters container in those buildings. We were able to bring on the executive director, Tyrone Garrett, in the public housing. There are public and private buildings in this city. There are about 73. 23 of the buildings belong to public housing. Public housing is much more organized because HUD mandates that they have a full complement of officers. So it was easier to try to put the containers in those buildings because they have a 24-hour security guard and they have the right type of equipment to monitor those senior buildings. And then you have the private buildings, which presented a greater challenge for me and Chairman Billett and Melissa and others to try to reach out to the private buildings and see if we could get them to come involved in this process. And of course, it's a security issue. So we have like 73 public and private housing citywide. Ward 5 has the highest number, which is 17. Fort Lincoln has the highest number because we have over 1,000 seniors living there. Not only did our plan, and we named this plan after late Congressman John Lewis called Good Trouble. Initially, the plan went forward, was named after Spike Lee, Board of Election, do the right thing, don't disenfranchise any senior. Also, the plan involved a number of nursing homes where as many as maybe a couple thousand people live in the nursing homes. We have assisted living units in the District of Columbia. A few hundred people are there. And then we have the group homes. So we were talking about not only the public housing, private housing, group homes, nursing homes. We were talking about how do we protect these people and not allow them to have to come out to vote. I think the chairman is going to address some of the questions. The plan is not going forward as we would like. I think the chairman shared the plan with me the other day in terms of how we would not start, but how we would end. I would hope that the information that is obtained by what the chairman will explain to you is what will happen to these senior buildings citywide. We will use that information to go back under the leadership of Chairman Fletcher and the Ward 5 Dems to analyze that information and see what we can do better as we approach the elections coming. The goal is never again. And of course, this would increase the turnout tremendously. Because for years, one of the problems I've always had was not being able to get the people in the wheelchairs, walkers, and canes to the polls, even though they had curbside voting, because most times we couldn't find vehicles for the handicapped. So I'll stop and pause, and I think the chairman can jump in there, but I do want to thank our chairman of the Ward 5 Dems and my committee, Chairman Bennett, Melissa, who lives in Ward 5, and that we're going to clean this thing up. And it may not be what we started out to be, but certainly we're going to take a look at it, and I can guarantee you that I feel the passion from Chairman Bennett and our committee that going forward, maybe the next time around, there will be drop boxes or voters containers in all public and private buildings, and they will get on the elevator, and that will be their only public transportation. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Bob, for sharing that with us. And you shared some very important information regarding the senior voting opportunities here in the district. And before we get to Q&A, Mr. Bennett is still here. The pizza came and he's still here. We're going to go on to Jennifer Blemur. The reason why we invited her this evening was even as I got my ballot and I looked at the back, I found something about initiative measure number 81. And I looked at it and I read it and I said, wait a second, does anyone know about this referendum on the ballot? And I read it very carefully, and I consider myself to be relatively intelligent. And I said, wait a second, psychedelic mushrooms? Okay, with that, Jennifer Blemur, please share with us what you can tell us about Initiative 81.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Dorinda, for having me. Thank you so much, Hazel, for inviting me as well. So there is one particular specific point about ballot initiative 81 everyone kind of has to have in their mind to fully understand it, is that there's a difference between decriminalization and legalization. So in a previous meeting that I was in, and the folks that were leading the campaign were talking about it, there were a lot of conversations about, does this legalize it? Are we going to be able to sell it? You know, a lot of those things, and that's not what this ballot measure does. What the ballot measure does in particular is say that the district residents agree that this is going to be the lowest level of priority for law enforcement, and it also calls on the DC Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney for DC to cease all prosecutions. From the campaign, essentially what they said is that not only mushrooms, but psilocybin mushrooms, cacti, iboga, and ayahuasca, which have been used to treat depression, anxiety, trauma, PTSD. Individuals who are using those products for those purposes, or maybe even not for those purposes, they would not be arrested for their use. It does not now prevent, it does not require people to sell these mushrooms. It is still a Schedule I drug. And so individuals could not sell it because we're in the district. We cannot legalize this to sell Schedule I drugs because we are not a state. It does not allow for people to set up shops to sell mushrooms or anything like that. In essence, what this is calling on is just that to reduce the likelihood that someone would be arrested for use or the possession of these materials. And so that's what the ballot is. This is a ballot referendum that has already passed in California and in Colorado. And this year, there's also a ballot referendum on Oregon that would allow doctors to actually be able to prescribe these materials to people for those purposes of treating depression, anxiety, PTSD, and more. So that is what the ballot initiative is. I know that there was also a couple of questions about, well, how did it get on the ballot? There were, of course, a couple of PACs that provided money to help get people to, put things out on, to get the signatures to have this on the ballot. In essence, again, I know there's a lot of questions about their usage. As it stands, there isn't really definitive data about the number of arrests that are related to its use. I know that there was a question, because I had similar questions about, well, who gets arrested for this? We don't have that information yet, but hopefully the district will release that at some point so we can have a bigger understanding of how does this intersect with people's daily lives.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We will have some questions for you in a moment. I'd like to at this time also acknowledge Alice Miller, who is also from the DC Board of Elections. She's on here with us, and she's the Executive Director of the DC Board of Elections. Thank you for being here with us, Alice. Going on.
Can I just add? Can I interrupt you? I wanted to add just one thing to Mr. King's presentation, and two things. One is Bob King has been an incredible partner to the Board of Elections, focused on making sure that we give seniors the very best opportunity possible to vote. What he was referring to initially, we did initially kick around the idea is not the right term, but we did focus on trying to figure out a way to put drop boxes or really collection boxes in senior facilities. Right now, based on time and a lot of different things, security was a real concern, and trying to make sure, and particularly this election cycle where there is so much security and so many questions around ballots and fraud and people stealing ballots. But what we are going to do is we have reached out to, and we have 55 senior buildings that are housing seniors, where we have a schedule, and we're going to have DCBOE staff show up at those facilities for 2 hours and be there to collect ballots from seniors during election week. So seniors who are in those buildings will not have to go anywhere. They'll simply have to come downstairs and put their ballots in the collection boxes. And so we don't have any issues of the ballots ever being out of the control of either the voter or the Board of Elections. And so as we looked at that, I mean, and this I think is a giant step forward relative to giving seniors more convenience and a greater opportunity to vote in the District of Columbia. We still want to continue to look at other ways that would make it even more convenient, and there is and they've got a schedule that they haven't even let me see for security reasons. And we're trying to make sure that again, what happens is that a ballot goes from a senior's hand into a collection box that is held by the Board of Elections. And so there's a schedule where there'll be at 55 buildings for a 2-hour period. And so the management of those buildings will be able to let the seniors know what day and time the Board of Elections will actually be there to collect their ballots. So I feel really good about that being a great step forward. There are other things that we're still looking at and that we want to do. And Bob King has, like I said, has been just an amazing support in that process, and Melissa Alexander, the whole staff in the organization. So anyway, that's where we are, and that's where Mr. King has helped us get to as far as seniors. So I'll shut up and let you get to questions.
Okay.
And if I have to jump off, Alice, if I have to jump off, Alice has more information than I do anyway, so I'm probably not the best person to talk to in that regard, but I'll try.
Okay, thank you so much, Chairman Bennett. We have one more on our agenda before we get to Q&A. So everyone hold your questions.
Oh, I'm so
and if you
sorry.
want to put, that's okay. If you want to put them in, this is very unstructured. If you want to put it in the chat, that would be great because I can then read it off. The last person we have is Robert Branham. I suggested that he be a part of this conversation only because when I got my ballot, once again, I'll show you my ballot, which I have to fill it out and everything. At the bottom, I'm in ANC 6D01. It was vacant. So there's no one running in my Ward 6 ANC 6D01 2,000 resident district. And so I thought we'd have Robert on here to speak to us about the importance of, number one, researching and knowing who your ANC commissioner candidates are, and number two, making certain that you find them at the bottom of the ballot and you vote for someone there. Many of us don't know that the ANC commissioner is the person in our 2,000 member single member district who actually meets with developers, handles local issues in the 2,000 member area that they represent. So with that, Robert, can you please join us and share some words of advice and guidance as to why it's important to vote for an ANC commissioner, and what we should all do to make certain that we are aware of who our candidates are.
Thank you, Dorinda, for inviting me, and also want to extend my thanks to the Team 20 members, Gwen Johnson and Linda and Hazel, and the others for extending this invitation to me, and I'm glad to be able to join my good friend Bob King. He's always been out there advocating for seniors, and I just want to acknowledge him and give a shout out to my Ward 5 chair, Dem Chair Gordon, and say hi to Alice. As a commissioner, being a commissioner is thankless, long, hard workers, and the agencies, as you said, are nonpartisan, but we're locally elected in at the neighborhood level, and we are a critical part of the DC Home Rule Charter. And so it was valued that local participation would be neighborhood grassroots in the initial, and that's where the agencies come in. And there are 40 commissions across the city, and we handle the various issues like transportation, zoning, planned unit development, otherwise known as PUDs. And this year, I believe there are over 100, maybe 107 commissions that are ANC SMDs that are competitive, and there are 164 that are uncontested. And when I receive my ballot, ANCs are always at the bottom of the list. But it is important that we vote for the ANCs, because that's where the first level of our government starts. And it's very important that people come to recognize the contributions that commissioners make to our government. And I want to stress that the commissioners take their task very seriously. And we get my mailboxes and email boxes get filled with developers wanting to get permission or authorization and support when they go to the zoning commission to say that the community supports what's happening, or we have responded to community concerns. And I know Bob King, who's the mayor of Fort Lincoln, the longest serving commissioner, I believe, in the District of Columbia, can attest to this, that it is a very important task. And a lot of residents that come into DC don't really understand the role of ANCs, but it's critical that we recognize our role in the makeup of the legislative policy of the District of Columbia. And with that, I will turn it back over so that you can get on with your agenda. And thank you, everyone, for listening to me, and we can move forward. I cast my ballot and I dropped it off at the Martin Luther King Library on Monday. They got all the ballots that come to my wife, my son, and I. We submitted our ballots.
Okay, thank you so much, Robert, for sharing that information with us regarding the importance of voting for your ANC commissioner and finding out who was running for those positions. Even though they are at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of government representatives, they do have a lot of say in what goes on in your local neighborhood. So please take a moment and research, find out who's running. You can even give them a call or email them, but please take note of who your ANC commissioner is, because it's very important. And as I said at the beginning of this program, all politics is local, and that is as local as you can get. So I'd like to, at this time, I'm going to jump off topic a moment, and these are things that were of concern to me that I wanted to share. A few things that I felt were important. Number one was, many of us don't know that when you vote on your ballot, you have to use a blue or black pen, and you have to fill in that circle. No X's, no check boxes, no Mickey Mouse figures, whatever you want to do. It has to be filled in its entirety with a blue or black pen. The other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention to is on this form, it does say you have to refold your voted ballot and place into the secrecy sleeve, which I'm certain many of you have seen, which is this one. Hold on, I'm holding it up right in the camera, but it has a little hole in it too. And I did my research on it, and it appears that this little hole serves to put it in, to basically line it up on a pole or something like that. And they're able to then go through the process, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bennett or Miss Alice, to basically go through the process of making certain that the ballot is in there, and they can codify it with there's a code on the back. And I understand also that there's going to be a tracking mechanism, and I guess you can speak to that, one of you, later on, but there's also a barcode on the back. And last but not least, I wanted to really emphasize, and I know I was watching the news today, and it said about there was a certain percentage, like 1% of the ballots that were submitted on the January 2nd primary, this is according to the news, were invalidated because you didn't sign the back of the envelope, and the signature has to correspond, based upon what I understand, to the signature that's on your driver's license. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I understood from the media. And the most important thing above all, and this was of concern to me for the January 2nd primary, is I had a little phrase that I coined, from the countertop to the mailbox at that time. And I was fearful of those of us like me. I'm going to fill this out, and then I might put it in the envelope, and I might put it on my counter or near my laptop and not take it to the next step. So please remember, once you've done all your steps, make certain you get it to its final destination. Otherwise, we've all wasted our time, and we don't want to do that. This is a very crucial election. So with that, I'd like to have a few members of our Team 2020 are going to ask some questions first, and then we're going to open up the floor. I have some.
Dorinda, I think Alice or Mr. Bennett might want to comment on their signature validation piece. You know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me. Yeah. I'm gonna something, and then Alice can go with the other thing. Is that the number of ballots during June that were challenged because of primarily signature, was just over 1%. So it's not a large number. But the statement you made around signing it like your driver's license, that was just a tip that I gave to a reporter, because we have access to your DMV database, and so the signatures that are on the driver's license are signatures that we have access to. And so one tip I made was that a voter may want to sign their ballot the same way they sign their driver's license, but it's not required. So, but that was just a tip in terms of making sure that there's a good match. Look at your driver's license and sign consistent with that. So that was the only point about that. So there is no requirement to sign your ballot the same way that you sign your driver's license. It was just a little tip. So Alice, did you want to comment on some other stuff?
No, that was it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to ask, thank you, Chairman Bennett, for clarifying that, because I was watching the news and I said, oh, I better share this, and then I thought about it. I said, not everybody has a driver's license. So you're correct. There was one thing also that I wanted to also add, because I think our elderly senior citizens might have fallen into the practice of putting an X in some instances when they're signing. But we'll get to that later on. Let me go to Samaya Lane, and she has the first question. The floor is open, Samaya.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Can
Yes.
everybody? Oh, okay, good, good. If you don't mind, I have two questions, and I put one question in the chat box. There are a large percentage in this country of illiterate people of the population. Are you making accommodations for non-readers and or disabled people who cannot come, to the boxes? Are you making any type of accommodations for these illiterate people or non-readers?
Are you speaking with respect to them signing their ballot or with respect
to signing their ballots or being able to understand? I guess this is more of an education part.
So, okay, so if someone cannot sign their ballot or if they put an X on the ballot, we will reach out to the voter and determine if that in fact was what the voter's intent was. And we will ask the voter, we have a cure process. Well, we will ask the voter to actually send us a copy of how they signed their ballot. We will send them a cure letter and ask them to provide to us the the signature that they signed on their ballot and do a comparison to that ballot. We check every ballot for signatures. So it's not a random check, we check every ballot. If there is an instance where a signature does not match the signature on the voter registration application, we will go through it, pull that ballot, set it aside, and reach out to the voter and go through at this point, it's a third level check, and request the voter to submit something that we will send them a document and have them submit, the way in which they would have signed their ballot. So if you sign with an X, we accept it. That's not a problem.
And one more question, if I could. Do you have a main number which a person, a citizen could call in if they have a problem with the ballot boxes, such as vandalism or the box is locked?
Okay, so the boxes are open. They are not to be locked until November 3rd at 8 p.m. They'll be open 24 hours. But the number that anybody can call is our main line. It's 202-727-2525. And that phone is being answered until 10 o'clock every night and Monday through Friday and from 9 till 3.
Thank you.
I mean, on Saturday Saturday from 9 to 3.
Saturday 9 to 3. Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Before we open up the floor to other questions, we have two more from Team 2020. Since they did organize this event, I'm giving them first dibs. Jean Patel. Jean Gross Patel. Are you there? I see your name, but there you go.
Yes. Hi, I do have a question. There's been some uncertainty or clarity regarding mail-in ballots and those that are drop-offs. When are those ballots counted? Are they counted prior to the November 3rd, to be recorded for the November 3rd election, or are they counted afterwards?
So we're processing ballots as we receive them. And the way that works is when a ballot comes through the mail ballot drop box or the mail or through the mail, we have a part of the processing procedure is to actually validate the signatures. We have to, once the signature validation is complete, the ballot has to literally be unfolded and flattened out. As you know, the ballots are tri-folded. They will not go through the machine to be counted until they are flattened. So that's a process that takes a day or so to flatten the ballots. And then at that time, after we've done all of that, we will then process the ballots. We will not literally tabulate until election night, after the polls close at 8 p.m. on election night. Election night totals will include early vote center, election day vote centers, and the ballots that we have received and processed up through and including 8 p.m. on election night. That will not be all of our mail-in ballots, because as I said, it takes a little bit of time. So if we get ballots on November 3rd, obviously those ballots will probably not be a part of the ballot count for election night. The last day that we can receive ballots is up till November 13th, even though they must be postmarked by November 3rd, but we have 10 days after that to receive them. So it will be an ongoing process and a continuing process from the time we begin to process the ballots. Just a matter of when we receive the ballot and at what point in the process it is completed, that procedure.
Okay, I have one second question. How important is it that you include the sleeve when you send back your application? I mean,
It's
your
not.
ballot.
It's not. It's just some voters want a secrecy process, so it's not important at all. It doesn't matter here. I've heard that in Virginia they won't count a ballot if the secrecy sleeve is not included. That's not our process at all. We include it for voters, but it's not required to come back.
Okay, and last and final, and this may have already been asked, but what happens if a person makes an error, realize that they have made an error on their ballot, and they want to mail their intent was to do early voting? What can they do?
Early voting or mail-in? They want to mail.
Mail-in.
Yeah, they can. They should. Yeah, they should call us. We've reissued a couple of ballots already, and we'll get them another ballot.
Okay, and the number again that they should call?
202-727-2525.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I posted it as she was speaking earlier in the chat, so it's there for everyone. Last person from Team 2020 is Emily Kissinger Lucio from the DC Democratic Women's Club. There we go, Emily. Floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. And it's Emily Singer Lucio, and I am also an ANC commissioner. So thank you so much for Mr. Branham's talk earlier, and I would love for support for ANC commissioners. So we definitely need all the support we can get. So my question is related to some seniors in my community. I know Mr. King has focused a lot on that issue, and I'm curious to know what his thoughts are, as well as the Board of Elections thoughts on this. But I think we're still in a phase where we're going to get a number of people who just think by experience that they can go to their old polling sites. And that is what I'm hearing from members of my community. And so while I applaud the efforts that the Board of Elections has done to get out the information to where people can go to vote, I'm wondering if anybody has thought about what we can do to remind people that there are places that they used to go vote that they can't go vote at anymore, if that makes sense. And I think we need to figure out how we address that issue, as well as being proactive about where they can go vote. Because I think that there is a very good likelihood that some people may just end up at those places. I heard it during the primary as well as now. So I just want to make sure we're addressing that as well. So thank you.
Okay, Michael, you want me to take that? That's a good question. And in fact, you know, we always say reading is fundamental. We have to, each one needs to help one. And with that, you know, I said earlier on a call, this is a team process. We're all in this together. It's a team effort. It's not the board and the voters, or the voters. It's the board and the voters. And so if you know someone that may be confused about that information, you know, of course, we're putting it out. It's in the voter guide. The voter guides went out. All the voter guides list all the locations, all 95 locations, all 32 early vote locations. So on our website, that may not be as convenient, obviously, for seniors, because they may not have access to that. We're linking it all over the place. It's on the listservs, and it is, we will, at the old precinct locations, have a sign that says this location is not serving as a voting location for this election, but it will list the locations that are open within that ward, not the whole 95, but just the ones that are open within that ward, and then tell you to call 727-2525 or go to the board's website to find the other locations. So those will be available on election day at the locations in which we are not using as old precincts. We did that also in June. The locations that stood that were not voting precincts, we had at each precinct that location was not being used as a voting precinct on election day, but where the other 20 vote sites were.
Can I ask how you're posting that, and like how obvious it is? Is it a big
that's right outside? In front. It will be in front of each building.
Okay.
In front of the buildings that are not being used as voting precincts, that are normally voting precincts on election day.
And I
know
appreciate
in
it. I'm just wondering whether some.
In Bloomingdale, what we're doing, Alice, is we're putting the Bloomingdale Civic Association, we're putting the word out that our usual polling sites are not going to be used, like the church and Dunbar and places that we've had in the past. So we're trying to get the word out that people need to mail it in, drop it off where the drop boxes are, but we let them know that the usual polling sites are not going to be used in November. So we're trying at the community level.
Can I just also make the suggestion that perhaps that information should be shared in some way long before election day? Because what I'd hate to see is perhaps, as people have mentioned, you know, people with disabilities and elderly populations who have difficult getting out but want to vote in person, you know, get all the way over there and find that out and then have to go someplace else. So I would advocate for finding a way to perhaps communicate that either by mail or phone or you know, or other publicized. I know that you've got, I know I actually picked up some of the signs from Anthony Hales yesterday, and I've been putting them out around my neighborhood. So, you know, I hope that helps too. But I think that this is particularly an issue we need to make sure to get on top of, but long before the day of election day. So thank you so much for any effort.
Yeah, what we will do clearly is emphasize that voters refer to their voter guide for the locations that are operating on election day. That lists all 95 centers. And that's the best place for that information, and as well as 32 vote centers. But we'll definitely put the word out. Make sure you know, put your plan together for voting. Part of that plan includes know where you're going to vote. And so we're trying to get that out as well. But we appreciate that.
Yeah, and we also are looking at doing robocalls and also putting out signs and door hangers and that kind of stuff as well. So, but it's a good point, and it is something that we're constantly trying to focus on. Make sure people have that.
One more suggestion about perhaps how you might do that, Mr. Bennett, and that is, you know, everyone's mentioned about the ANC commissioners, and I get emails all the time about stuff. So, you know, perhaps it's something you can share with ANC commissioners to share with their constituents about. You know, about these options.
We'll be doing an e-flyer to the ANC commissioners. We've done one. I hope you got it. And we'll be doing another one. We thank Gottlieb for the list, because he was he shared that with us, and we used him as the conduit for that. Again, each one helped one. Teamwork.
Yeah, great. As long as it can emphasize the fact that don't go to your normal polling place.
Yeah, make sure your polling place is open. Yep.
Thank you so much.
We'll do that. Okay.
Let me have a comment.
Alice, you have a question from the chat.
Comment.
Oh, go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
This is very important. This is very new to at least nearly 40,000 registered voters. We are doing mail-in ballots for the first time. I will remind everybody, we've been voting for the President of the United States since roughly 1961, and DC has 3 electoral votes, probably involved in the local elections in 1971. I'm down if we do, if we don't. People are seeing the guide. Now, I know the chairman was saying this. Dunbar happens to be one of the centers that will be open of the 92 on election day. Mount Hope Church is right across the street from Fort Lincoln will be open, as well as Verdi Bacchus. And I think Alice is right. What's crucial to this thing right now, and I'm almost carrying the voter's guide around with me, so I can tell folks that this is what's happening for the 32 sites that might be opened on primary. This is what's going to happen on primary day. I have struggled with this issue with seniors for about 40 years. Some of them still want to do their Jane Pittman thing. When we used to do absentee ballots and say, don't go to the poll, they still got to go and cast that ballot in person. I'm getting calls all over, at least Fort Lincoln, saying, Bob King, the drop box is now open on the 5th. But I'm not going to take, where's the drop nearest one? I said, go to Monroe Street. They said, I'm not getting on the bus, going to Monroe Street to put my ballot in the box. What are my other options? I said, well, if you're not going to do that, the thing that we were fighting to get away from was the mailbox and the post office. There's some now says we can vote early. If you don't want to go to Monroe Street and pay the public transportation, post office is right across the street with front of the senior buildings. The Postmaster General, if all of us know, sent a card out to all of the voters in the District of Columbia saying we can take your ballot if you do it early enough. So I'm saying to seniors now, if you don't want to get on the bus to take your ballot to the drop box, let us be very clear. As the chairman said earlier, probably 75 or 80% of the people would have been voted by October 22nd at the rate that the board is sending these ballots out, about 27. If you haven't got to receive a ballot by the 21st of October, I'm telling folks, then that's when you go over to one of the turkey thicket, for an example, because the only purpose of people that should be getting in line at these polling sites is because they can do same-day voters registration. Registration closes on October 15th, same-day registration. So the lines that you'll see at Turkey Thicket, for an example, are people getting in line who need to go in to vote. If you got a ballot on election early voting day, you don't have to get in line. As I understand from the chairman, there are going to be drop boxes there. So if you click the drop box, your ballot, you just put it in the drop box. If you get in line, you still have to practice social distancing. According to the CDC, you need to take a blue pen with you. You need to wash your hands before going in, wash them before coming out, wash down all the equipment in there. I would suspect that majority of the folks by October the 7th or 27th would have been voted in the District of Columbia. All that's left to do between that and the general election is people who want to do same-day voters registration. Seniors, they're going to always try to find a way to go there. I have no transportation after 40 years, if I would call a loved one. One of the things I like about Bennett's plan in the end that Alice had mentioned, one of the reasons for going to those buildings is that if somebody is functionally literate and have an issue with the ballot, there's somebody from the Board of Elections that Alice and Melissa will be sending ward coordinators to assist with that. Anybody that has in a wheelchair, if you haven't gone to vote yet, the cavalry is on its way from the Board of Elections. Once that date and time gets out, that they come into the building for that 2 hours. I believe that will be the cleanup effort for those who are canes, walkers, wheelchairs, blind, visually impaired, functionally illiterate. Somebody from the cavalry of the Board of Election will be there to assist with that process.
Thank you for sharing that additional information. Alex, do you want to add anything, or
No, I think Mr. King, as always, has hit the nail on the head and has said it much more eloquently and much more forcefully than I could have ever put it. So I thank you for that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to drop off, and I sincerely appreciate you guys inviting us. And so my last words is vote early, and so we can process things and get the ballots in as soon as possible. So
before you go, can I ask
much.
a question? May I ask a question,
Sure.
Dorinda?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't have any pull. I don't have any clout, and I have been trying to get the Biden campaign to use see one the sign still delivered. I'm yours. And I think if we can't do it on a national level, I would love to see DC use that because nothing could be more important right now. Because the important thing is you got to sign it. And as Dorinda said, take it off that counter, sign it, and take it where you want it to go. Either mail it or put it in a drop box.
I like it.
That's my recommendation.
I like it.
Yeah, we'll give it to the PR people. See what they do.
Yeah. Anthony, I think he was on, but yeah, I like it. Sign still delivered. Yep.
Thank you.
I like it.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett, for joining us. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Going to some chat questions here. This is directed towards Alice because Chairman Bennett has dropped off. What do you do if you receive a mail-in ballot for someone not living at your residence? Do you throw it away or report it? And I'm one. I have one here next to me from a former resident.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Right, I can address that.
Yeah.
You can just put it back, put return to sender and put it back in the mail and we'll get it back. Or you can put it in a Dropbox, return to sender, so that we know that that person no longer lives there. And the post office will deliver it back to us. Just as you would with any other mail that you get that doesn't belong to you, return to sender.
Gotcha, understood. To Jennifer Blemur, thank you, Alice. Jennifer, if you're still here, someone asked a question and asked that you state what mushrooms are, not the vegetable.
Oh, they're the psilocybin mushrooms that can create a hallucinogenic effect. Sorry, they're ATVs outside my window. So they're not like your shiitake or anything like that. They are psilocybin mushrooms that are a Schedule 1 drug. I saw another question in the chat that was similar to that. And so that's what those are. And again, the initiative would include those ayahuasca, ibota, and cacti.
Okay, thank you. And in fact, we have Melissa Labasani, who is the proposer of Initiative 81 and chairman of the Decriminalize Nature DC, the campaign supporting this effort. And if you have any questions, she's on board to actually answer them at any time. I'm going down the list here of other questions. Was the campaign to place Initiative 81 on the ballot funded by a group located in DC? If so, what is the name of the group that funded Initiative 81's placement on the ballot? Sounds like it's a question for the lady I just, for Melissa Lavanya.
Labasani. Yes,
Oh,
thank you. Yeah, so this campaign began with me in 2019 after I experienced tremendous healing from postpartum depression after the birth of my second child. My life had really spiraled out of control, and I began to microdose with psilocybin mushrooms, and I saw a transformation within a few days. And it was so profound that I was motivated to explore what a campaign in DC would look like. The Denver decriminalization campaign was happening at the same time. And I reached out to the Denver campaign, and they connected me with all sorts of people in the drug reform world. And, you know, I'm a DC government employee. I have a full-time job. And I didn't know how I'd pull off a campaign, but it turns out that I got connected to a company called Dr. Bronner's Soap Company. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar, but it's a soap that's sold in a lot of natural product stores, Whole Foods, I believe Trader Joe's potentially has it as well. But they fund a lot of campaigns similar to this, and they donated to our campaign. There are currently over 100 cities right now that are in some form of decriminalizing psychedelic plant medicines, and they've been a wonderful support for us. But I was born in DC. I'm a Ward 6 mom. My children go to school here, and this campaign is all me. So I'm happy to answer any other questions you all may have.
Does anyone have any direct questions regarding this? Hazel? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Hazel. Hazel.
I'm very curious. Thank you. I'm very curious to know how this initiative, most people that I know have no knowledge of Initiative 81 even being on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
The information from what I'm able to determine was not circulated through the normal channels, ANCs, civic associations, churches, community groups. It appears as if those groups were circumvented, that it was deliberate, that they avoid those folks in order to get this initiative on the ballot, much like Initiative 64, which was the decriminalization of the marijuana. So my question is a twofold question. In what way will this benefit the indigenous people, the people, DC residents, particularly young people? And my second question is, why are people coming from Colorado and California so anxious to lobby and to pay residents from Ward 7 and 8 to lobby on their behalf? What's in it for them? How will they make money? And how will they benefit? And will it be to our detriment, like the previous one?
Right. I hear your concerns, and they're all extremely valid. Yeah, it's fair. So, I think that it's really hard to run a campaign in the middle of a pandemic, especially a signature drive. Initially we were supposed to get our petitions in March, and with the impending public health emergency, we were scrambling to find a solution. How are we going to gather signatures for during this pandemic when everyone was at home? We actually lobbied DC Council to change laws that we could mail petitions to people's homes. So every household that had a registered voter in it got mailed a petition packet from us. We have which was over like 200,000 households got it. And as you all may know, there are issues with mail, and some households potentially didn't get that issue or get that petition. But, you know, we had a very compressed period of time where we could gather signatures. It was basically from May until the very beginning of July. We submitted our signatures on July 6th. And it was really hard to hire people. People were really afraid to work. And it was just really difficult to get people to get onto the campaign. And we had some of our allies who have worked on other decriminalization campaigns across the country come in and help us and just try and educate voters on this issue. And I believe we collected over 36,000 signatures in a very short period of time, which I'm very proud of. We've had also 0 COVID positive cases during this time, so we put safety first in front of everything. And it was really the people coming in from across the country were just here to help us get signatures and educate DC voters. They've been having conversations with constituents from their own jurisdictions, and they were just really knowledgeable about the subject matter. And, you know, we understand that this is a subject that not many people are very familiar with, and we got the as best as we could. As far as bypassing ANCs, we've been doing a ton of outreach to ANCs. We have spent the last, it's October now, we've spent the last 2 months doing outreach to various groups. I think normally in a campaign, I would be attending ANC meetings and speaking about this and building coalitions with various events, by using various events that we host. But it's been really hard to do a lot of this outreach and coalition building. So the challenge is just getting the word out and educating people on this subject matter. These are not recreational drugs that we're talking about. These are medicines that have amazing healing properties. And I really encourage you all to look at the research on this subject matter because it's very promising. I think I answered all the questions.
Dorinda, I have to jump off, but I did want to just speak to a part of Hazel's question that didn't quite get answered. In the larger conversation about drug policy and the war on drugs and the impact that it's had on Black and Brown communities, there is this disparity between who has been negatively impacted by it and who profits from it. And so I think within this ballot initiative schema that we're working to decriminalize drugs, the education component can also include how do DC residents benefit from this in the holistic term. As it stands, this ballot initiative does not legalize the sale of these materials, so it's a different conversation in regards to legalized marijuana. And the other part of it being that because of COVID in particular, and because I work in state policy, a lot of legislative sessions either ended early or moved in a completely different direction, that any kind of legislative asks that could have been made weren't made. And so many organizations, advocacy especially, shifted to ballot initiatives because it would be just faster for them to do it, as opposed to trying to figure out when will session open back up again in different states.
Question. Yes, question. Hazel, you mentioned 66. That was Proposition 71, the marijuana piece. And that was put on the laser lane because at that time, DC had the highest arrests for young people, Afro-American folks smoking marijuana in the country, over 2,000. So we all know what happened to Proposition 71. Its purpose was to save the young people from getting arrested and just giving them a citation and say you can have 1 or 2 joints and it was okay. And of course, the young people have been smoking marijuana without 71. Now, when you get to this mushroom piece, and Hazel, I don't know if you're aware that the Democratic State Committee the other night voted to support the resolution. Now, you know that because I deal with seniors, I've been approached when this initiative first started. And for an example, they were trying to get 35,000 signatures by the deadline of July. I got contacted by some people. I do petitions and people pay for signatures. This is a well-funded organization. They were paying something like $10 for a signature. A lot of people will be able to become business people because they would take the 10 and they would get 4 or 5 people, say, to sign the signatures, and they give them $3 to $4 a piece. If you look on the website right now, and I'm trying to tell, they're in Ward 7 and 8, and I'm telling folks now, you can work for this organization on election day, and they're paying like $260 for 1 day's work outside of these polling places just to hand out their information. They're paying an average of $21 an hour. And if you're working for them a whole week, you can make this is $1,800 just standing out there passing out the lecture. This is a well-funded organization. My seniors been calling me trying to figure out what store to go get these mushrooms from. And I say they're not at the store. And I explained to them what this whole initiative is about. Now the movement is over in 7 and 8. When it went before the Democratic State Committee the other night, it was the first item on the agenda. It passed the agenda. They have done their work. You know, the progressive movement in this town, there was initiatives, one was the marijuana, now there's a mushroom thing, and the next issue coming up before us is going to be legalizing prostitution. That's the story. When you got money, yes, they changed it. They mailed a petition out in the mail to everybody. They got, it's amazing. I've been doing campaigns for 50 years. I've never seen somebody pay that much money for a signature. Thank you.
Yeah,
Prostitution and heroin.
Are dealing with, well, we're dealing with some really unprecedented times, and we initially put the call out to have volunteers get their signatures for us, and you know, our initial was just really hard to recruit people to come work for us, because I mean, we were asking people to take a risk, and the only way to sign up for this was to pay the rate that was going across the country, and that's just what we had to do at that time. As I think DC can be on the forefront of this. I have put links in the chat as well. Johns Hopkins has an entire research unit dedicated to researching the effects of psychedelic plant medicine on various issues that our healthcare system does not address. The studies on pharmaceutical antidepressants are not good at all, and they don't solve a lot of the core issues of depression, and sometimes they make the situation worse for somebody. I had a friend who was on antidepressants, and he took his own life, and I don't think that anybody should have to go through this. I think that we suffer enough, and if we have solutions in front of us and we have actual research from reputable institutions that support it, then our laws and the way we treat drugs and the way we treat people that use drugs has to change.
Okay, excuse me, Dorinda, I'm going to have to jump off.
And I was going to ask you to give some closing. Yes, please share some.
Okay, closing remarks. I do want to say this. I don't want anyone to be mistaken by what's going on with this election, and I want you to have real, true expectations. And I've been saying this, and I will continue to say it. If you intend to vote in person, if you show up in person, be it at a vote center for early voting or vote center on election day, you will wait. Bring your patience. Bring your patience. And understand that you will wait. You will wait because we are doing social distancing. We are wiping behind every voter with PPE. We are doing social gathering. There's a limit to how many individuals can be in a preset and a polling place at a time, and we will be enforcing that full speed. So there will be lines. Do not mistake that. Do not be mistaken. There will be lines. I don't want anyone to think that there will not be lines. There will be lines. But with that said, put your plan in place. Be a P3 voter is what we're saying. Have your plan, be participating, and be patient. And that's the kind of voter we want you to do. And we're going to get your ballot back, signed, sealed, and delivered. So with that, thank you all. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. It's AP, the letter P, Miller, at dcboe.org. And many of the questions that you have can be answered on our main line on 202-727-2525. And thank you all for having us. We really appreciate it. I've got to jump on another call that's waiting for me. So thank you all.
We thank you, and we're going to end at 7. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and for Chairman Miller. Thank Chairman Bennett. With that said, I have a few announcements, and then we're going to sign off. I hope that this has been informative for everyone here. Are going to have, I said in the chat, I put a link, well, Jennifer put a link in here. We are having a vice presidential debate watch party before, starts at 7:30 p.m. You can link, the link is in the chat. It would say from Jennifer Blemur to everyone, click on it. We're going to be acknowledging and saluting the women of DC. It's going to be a very well-attended event, so we'd like to have you join us. And if there aren't any other announcements to be made, we can call.
Yes. Sorry.
Yes.
There's one other. Hi, Dorinda. Hi, everyone. Again, Gordon. Gordon Fletcher. Yeah, I'm Gordon Fletcher. I'm chair of the Ward 5 Democrats. Bob King, he's also a mentor of mine. So I have him come over to my house to do certain Zoom calls. So that's why you see a little confusion here. However, my purpose right now is tomorrow, the Ward 5 Democrats, we will be hosting an independent candidates forum. We will have over 11 candidates for the at-large race present. It's a very important process for us as Ward 5 Democrats. Even though these are independent candidates, we believe in educating voters on the second option for your vote. Ward 5 Democrats have already endorsed Robert White. And we will be having him say a few words in the beginning. But again, in terms of education, it's very important that we are doing this as Ward 5 Democrats. So please, if you can find some time to come out tomorrow, it'll be from 7:30 to 8:30. I believe Emily Lucio, and you see her husband there, John Lucio, they're working on this within the Ward 5 Democrats, as well as Bob and Hazel and everyone. If you could put the link in the chat, that would be great. I just want to give that quick blurb. We'd love to see all of you there to support. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Gordon. And one other announcement, we are having the DC Democratic Women's Club. We will be hosting on Wednesday, October 14th at 7 p.m. The Power of the Next, Millennials and Gen Z. Please shoot me an email at dorindaw@gmail.com and I can send you the link and the particulars. If we have no other, Hazel, you had one other thing to add? Hazel, before we sign off? Hazel?
Yes, I simply wanted to thank Gwen Johnson, who's the chair of Team 2020, for her leadership and for all the members who cooperated in this event as well as the other events. And you as well, Dorinda. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, everyone. And make certain to tune in tonight to watch our Democratic nominee for Vice President, Kamala Harris, wipe the floor with Mike Pence. Have a good evening.